in North.
You know why I knew who Hootie and the Blowfish were? Is that my first concert, and nay, my first 3 concerts, were all Hootie and the Blowfish.
All of them?
Yeah, they played at Ribfest in downtown Indianapolis, which was free. So my parents would take us down, and we never went to concerts. So we would do free stuff mostly. And so I saw them play, and they were good.
I could be really into sitting down, eating some ribs, and watching Hootie and the Blowfish. I could get down on that. You are listening to Tape Spaghetti, the podcast about the twisted and tangled innards of the music industry. Some of this content may not be for all listeners or viewers, so if it's not for you, no harm, no foul. We'll just catch you on the next one. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Here we go.
Welcome back to Tape Spaghetti. I am Scott Marquardt. I am joined, as always, by the one and only Blake Weiland. How you doing today, Blake?
Oh, man. I'm doing good. It's hot, but I'm doing all right.
It's hot everywhere. It's been hot down here for a while, but I see it finally crept its way up to the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, no, it's been like that. Yeah. We've been in the 90s for a while. It's not in the mid 80s, which isn't as bad, but yeah.
Oh, mid 80s is for summertime. That's a dream.
Oh, it's so hot. Why does it ever have to get above 67 degrees anywhere in the whole world?
Dude, I get it. It's like 95 here. It's brutal. And just without break, it's just been steady Eddie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you got too many sleeves on for that kind of temperature.
No. I'm also in like a building and not in a shed. You probably have that thing cooled down pretty good.
I do. It's I turn it off for the podcast, but it's like double walled, like they're like huge thick walls. It stays quite nice out here. Probably better than most buildings, actually.
Certainly better than our like cinder block like warehouse that we're in here. It's a little tough. We're able to cool it down pretty good, but like people will be like, "Oh, it's hot in here." I'm like, "Yeah, it's 95 outside." It is difficult to get a warehouse much below 20 degrees below the outside temperature.
I think the sweatiest I've ever been has been a couple different things. It was at the Taste of Chaos tour in 2006. I lost 8 pounds of water in one night. That was wild.
Whoa, who played that tour?
Atreyu, Story of the Year, Thrice, Deftones. I can't remember everybody off the top of my head. It was stacked, and I was in the mosh pit the whole time. So I was very sweaty then. And then working on pavers, like physically working on paving machines that are floated with asphalt. That's the other sweatiest I've ever been. And then running wires in our warehouse up in the upper thing. That was the third sweatiest I've ever been.
That was indeed a rather wet moment.
we were so drenched, and I don't want to reveal too much as it's maybe a bit untoward for the podcast, but we were both like, wow, everything is sweaty.
We were very wet. Yes. Speaking not of sweat, this is a total non sequitur, but you're way more up on like modern metal than I am. So this'll, you'll have known this for years, but I finally jumped on the Slaughter to Prevail train earlier today.
Yes.
Someone was describing it and I was like, that sounds wild. Let's tune in and see what that's like. And it was indeed wild.
It's wild. Yes. That whole band is a breakdown. Basically.
Yeah, basically. The whole Russian bit was kind of neat, like a neat element. That's a weird way to put that. Just like the way he can like roll his vowels and stuff. It's just this wild.
He's got
thing
a
I've never
crazy
really
voice.
experienced.
And then he just did like a bare knuckle boxing thing and got his face pummeled like 2 weeks ago.
So that was the news story that I saw that made me then listen to the band. So I guess it worked.
He's also like got a really hilarious video, of course, because this is stereotype, but where he's like wrestling a bear. Alex Terrible. Interesting fella for sure.
Yeah. The bear thing comes up a lot in the most recent record I learned.
Yes. Grizzly, I believe it's titled.
Yes, it is called Grizzly. So that's been pretty fun. Honestly, it rocked. It was pretty good.
Oh, they're heavy. I like them a lot. That is great gym music for sure.
Oh, that's a good point. I'm not like in any way like opposed to like I can like metal, but I don't really seek it out too much these days. Like there have been periods in my life where I was really, really into it. these days it's less like the thing that I'm reaching for. But when I do, a lot of times I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool.
There's some great stuff happening these days. Like really, really fun metal bands out there right now. There is, I believe if you like metal at all, there is a modern metal band out there for you. There's just so many different styles and ways to cut it now.
Yeah, so many different like incredible offshoots off of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't have a great segue either to jump from here to there, but since we're talking about music, let's talk about more music.
I thought like when we were talking about Sweaty, you were going to be like, and now we're going to discuss the career of Keith Sweat.
I would love that. That would be fantastic. But no. Today we're going to do something a little bit different, at least for the ones that I've presented here. Mm-hmm. We are going to talk about sophomore slumps in music. For those of you that don't know what the heck I'm talking about, sophomore slump is probably fairly self-explanatory, but basically is the idea that a band's typically their second record, sometimes, not always, sometimes it can be a bit of a hit or miss thing.
Mm-hmm.
And fans a lot of times like, oh, that was kind of disappointing. So I wanted to talk about this phenomenon a little bit, and the specific format that I'm going to kind of trace here. We're going to talk about 7 different albums.
Okay.
Whoa. And yeah. There'll be a little bit of rapid fire through them. I mean, not crazy rapid, but we'll kind of get through them. And then at the end of those, I want to talk about what commonalities happened. What are some of the different reasons, types of sophomore slumps, and things that they had in common, reasons that might be kind of causing this thing.
Now, because you and I, we're both obviously very involved with music, but we do, as much as we have similar tastes, we also diverge a fair bit. How many of these records are you fairly confident that I have heard?
That's a good question.
All right, we'll get into it. We'll find out.
Maybe half. Yeah.
All right.
Some of you probably have. And I should say, this is a good caveat for the beginning. Oop, lost a headphone there.
It happens. Hazards
these
with the job.
These are not selected necessarily to imply they're the biggest letdowns or anything like that. Quite on the contrary, in fact. I kind of selected a range of different types, I think, of sophomore slumps. Not all of which I'm necessarily going to argue are in fact like a slump, but for one reason or another, either that's just, for sales reasons or for critical reasons or fan reception, for one reason or another, they were generally considered, at least in their time, to be slumps.
Okay.
So I think it'll be kind of an interesting, wide-ranging thing. It's a lot of English albums, which is kind of unintentional. It just ended up that way.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I'm wondering too. Well, we're going to get into it. I have a feeling there'll be some I heard the first record. I don't know the one you're talking about.
That happens sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it happens sometimes. So, all right, let's kind of dive in and we'll, if we have to spend a little bit longer on, any of these particular records, we can, and then we'll kind of dissect the trends and overall a little bit later. So first off, I have The Clash, Give 'Em Enough Rope.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard this album, I'm sure.
Course. Yep.
So yeah, I was looking out for you. I wasn't going to go all stuff that you've never heard before. There might be a thing or two.
And now we're talking about Antigua Dubai's sophomore album. You've never heard this. Yeah.
I did not do that. I didn't do that this one time, just for you.
All right.
I thought it would be nice. So the Clash debut album, their self-titled album, is an incredible record. It was not necessarily like a barnstorming sales record, like where it's just like, oh, this went 20 times platinum right off the rip, like some of the albums we're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. But it certainly, even at the time, was considered to be this kind of landmark, really, really awesome record. And definitely as time has worn on, has continued to kind of earn its spot as this super important record. So The Clash, a fairly young band at this time, have to follow up this album, the self-titled, and that becomes Give 'Em Enough Rope, which comes out on November 10th, 1978. So like a couple of the things that I wanted to highlight here, they got some nice critical reception at the time. They called it, poised and unpretentious in Rolling Stone. Robert Christgau called it accessible hard rock. And the Village Voice also noted that it was effective melodically. So, it was not like panned by critics at the time. Mm-hmm. But the kind of biggest reason that this was seen as a bit of a slump was mostly the production that kind of went into it.
Okay.
The self-titled like original record has this like incredible raw sort of energy to it that a lot of listeners at the time didn't feel like totally came out on the second record.
Okay, I can see where they're going with that.
Yeah, so, kind of the loose story of how this happened. CBS Records, they wanted to polish up, allegedly, the sound of the band for more of the American audience. The self-titled was not like a thing that was like pushed and promoted and brought into America. So this was going to be kind of their big debut to like push it to the American audience from like a marketing and business perspective. So they brought in Sandy Pearlman, this producer, and they're like, hey, we want you to polish this up, make it a little bit more American friendly, so to speak.
Throw some cheeseburgers on it.
Yeah, that's right. Some of the reports were that Pearlman, the producer, didn't really like Joe Strummer's voice that much. And you can hear this on the record. The drums are pretty hot. The vocals like kind of low. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Some of the band were kind of frustrated the whole way through the recording process. They just felt like he was very nitpicky. And Paul Simonon complained that he just sort of lacked spontaneity. The general sense that I'm kind of getting is that, it's pretty by the books, and it's like, all right, get in, play this track. All right, now we're doing track 2. Hit me with the bass line, do this thing. You're like, hey, what if we like change, to a backbeat on this one? Like, no, we are here to get the job done.
Yeah, it doesn't sound very punk rock, for lack of a better term.
It does not. Yeah, Paul Simonon claimed that he was watching Imperial War Museum films to combat just how bored he was during the sessions.
That's pretty boring.
On top of that, you also had Joe Strummer. His like legendary Telecaster was being repaired and needed just like a whole ton of work. So he was recording on a Gibson ES345, a very different instrument from the Telecaster.
Different. Yeah.
And we've talked about this before. It was not quite the situation that it is today, where there's just dozens and dozens of guitars that are perfectly set up at the recording studio that you can grab from. It was a little bit rarer to find a good working guitar. So he just kind of went with it. Like I would never, if I was producing The Clash, be like, why don't you just play this Gibson hollow body? That'll be fine.
Yeah. Most of our audience is probably coming from the gear world like we do, but we do strive to not get too down that rabbit hole. But just for reference, this is almost as different as playing an electric and an acoustic guitar. They are very different sonically. When you it's very, very stark contrast. It's definitely still electric guitar, but it's about as far away from a Telecaster as you can get.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very much so. And so, in general, this kind of like landed in a place where the band was accused by some fans of selling out because they made this record that sounded kind of more polished than the original self-titled. But at the same time, it was not like hugely successful as a selling out record. Like it didn't do that very well either. It kind of walked the line in between two things in a way that didn't really work out super well.
Right.
And I think that what is interesting about this record more than anything, the reason that it finds its way onto a lot of like sophomore slump lists and opinions is not even that it's that bad. It's that London Calling came out after this.
Right.
And
which
so
is
you have
the album from The Clash, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And most other people's.
Exactly. At the time, critics were okay with it. They weren't like saying this is a masterpiece, but they weren't panning it either. Sales were okay. So nothing crazy, not like a big fall off like we'll see with some of the albums we talk about. But really just as time has worn on, the positioning of it, seeing the self-titled, having this one, and then London Calling has led to a lot of fans that get into the band down the line being like, what's the deal with that record? And people are like, you can skip it.
Right. It's not bad. It's just not as good. That's really what it comes down to.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And, if the third album had been just a total letdown, I think that this record would be seen as like, oh, no, that's pretty good.
Right.
Not as good as the self-titled, but like, they still had it here. And then it totally fell apart after that. Right.
Instead, they just lit the world on fire and like came out with London Calling, one of the most iconic albums of all time. And the rest is history, as they say.
Very much so. So jumping into our second album. This is, I could not do a list without this one. This is like, I think probably the example of A Sophomore Slump. This is the Stone Roses' Second Coming. How much do you know about the Stone Roses?
Not very much.
It's okay if not too much.
Yeah, not very much.
They are one of, I think, the most extreme examples of a band that was never as big in the US as they were in the UK.
Yes, I learned this by talking to my good friend, Mr. Richard Oliver, every week. Every time he's like, "You've never listened to the Stone Roses?" And I'm like, "The who?"
At least it's not me that has to beat you over the head with that, so that's good. But they were a really significant band in the UK. I remember seeing a poll in the 2000s at some point that was conducted in the UK of like, what's the most quintessential, the best British album of all time. And it was the Stone Roses debut at number 1, followed by Sgt. Pepper's.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. I'll give them a listen.
They're really, really big. They were really, really big at the time in the UK. And we just it didn't translate as well to the US market. And so we don't appreciate it. But for you and for any listener that's less familiar, just know like this is like one of the biggest bands, certainly of this, like really of all time in the UK, and certainly in this period. So they come out with this record. It's massive. It's also self-titled. Interestingly, that comes up a few times for us here. Went platinum in the UK, sold over 1 million, worldwide. Sold over 4 million worldwide. Went 5 times platinum in the UK. Excuse me here. So just a massive selling record, especially for something that's not huge in the American market and is really like, big in the UK market. So their follow-up to this one, by comparison, it just barely sold 1 million worldwide. So like, 1/4 as much. Wow. But that's not really, there's more that goes into it than just that. So this one's kind of interesting. They had this massive, massive following after this first record. They were one of those bands that just shot out of a cannon, basically out into the wild world. And then suddenly we're like, oh boy, we have to make more of that.
Right.
We have to follow that up.
We need to do that again if we can.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I this will come up a few times, but I always think of the Elvis Costello quote of you have 20 years to write your first album and you have 6 months to write your second.
That's right. That's very true.
That comes up a bit. This kind of inverted that. So they just basically took a really, really long time and went through a lot of, kind of BS to get this record out. So, for one, it was about 5.5 years between when the debut came out and when this album actually like hit the streets.
Okay.
That's a long time for people to wait and think about something. People were still like paying attention. They still cared. But it's quite a long time. They'd been through a lawsuit with their record label in that whole time. They switched labels and signed with Geffen after that lawsuit was finalized. They had a bunch of costs kind of piled up on the recording of this. So their first producer on the album was John Leckie. And he complained in 1993, 2 years after their debut, that they spent 3 weeks at a studio at 800 pounds a day and precisely nothing was recorded. Just nothing got done at all. There were a lot of creative struggles between the band. The band wanted to make heavy use of drum machines. The producer at the time was like, "You have the best drummer in the world. What are you doing? Why are you using a drum machine?" There were some tensions about that. Leckie quit himself after, kind of working for a few months on this. His replacement, Paul Schroeder, also quit. They only really made any progress on this album when their in-house engineer, Simon Dawson, took over and basically was like, all right, we need to aim for more of like kind of a raw live band in the room sort of sound here. That's like how we're going to be able to probably get this done. From the band themselves, John Squire, their guitarist, said, after such a whacking delay, we thought, why rush it? We were going to be criticized anyway.
Oh, all right. I mean, he's not wrong.
Once you're 3 years or 4 years out, who really, who's counting?
I honestly, maybe this is a little bit wrong, but once you're 4 years out, I'm gonna say 4. You might as well be 10. Like it just, and especially this day and age, things move so fast. Back then it was a little different, but
yeah,
once you're that far from the public eye, like in a recent fashion, I think some of the excitement can wear off pretty quickly. So yeah, why rush it? It's already been this long.
Yep, definitely. And so they do finally kind of get this whole album together and they come out with it, generally way later than anyone would have liked, whether it's the fans or the labels or anything else. And on top of that, the critical reviews aren't great. Fans don't really love the album. This is kind of one of those, 1-2 punches in our list of sophomore slumps where the general opinion seems to be it's nothing compared to the album that it was following up. And sales fit that narrative as well. Critics kind of agreed. Just overall kind of a miss all around, and an expensive miss, and a very long running, dragged out miss. And this one has kind of the most intense legacy of all. They never made a third record.
Oh, that was
just kind of it. So when you look at the catalog, it's, this debut that was this huge smash, and then the kind of disappointing follow up, and that's it.
Okay. And maybe that's part of why they didn't make it over here necessarily, because even the Beatles, they had to be basically the most famous band in the world before it really broke through in America.
It took some time.
Yeah. And so maybe if they had had a more successful follow up, that would have given them that much more time to get some legs in America. And maybe we'd be talking about them in the same breath as, I don't know, anybody else from there.
You're like, once I find out what this band sounds like, then I will make a comparison.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, Pink Floyd, but I don't think they sound like Pink Floyd. So yeah.
They also of note, around the time, mid 90s, really, once that album came out, they'd kind of been supplanted in Britpop world by Oasis and Radiohead, and it was and Blur, of course. So it was a bit of a bad time to be absent for a while.
That makes sense.
Other people came up and had a little bit more of the buzz going on by the time they put something else out there into the world.
Yeah, and Oasis certainly broke through over here. Even Blur, to a lesser degree, didn't quite crack it over here the way they did.
No.
Oasis,
they're not remotely the band they are in the UK.
Yeah, they were the same, basically, at the time, especially, on the same level as Oasis. And over here, I think we only know them for Woohoo!
Yep, song 2.
Yep, which is a great song. I do love that song.
They've got a lot of great songs, Blur does, but yeah, I when I listen to it now, I can understand why it didn't get as big here as the Oasis stuff. It actually more surprises me that they were so neck and neck, but who knows?
Who knows?
So, are you ready to move on to album number 3?
I do want to tell you one thing about Blur real quick, because I don't know if you know this.
Okay.
When we were at NAMM, this would have been 2018, I believe. We were at a guitar pedal builders party, which industry people will probably have heard us talk about at some point. Do you know who was there hanging out with our friend Andy Martin?
Well, Graham Coxon was around. Yeah.
Graham Coxon was there. Yeah. I didn't know if you knew he was there or not. So
that's what I thought you were going to say. I didn't meet him.
I said hello to him briefly, and then was like, that was Graham Coxon. Probably should have had a more interesting conversation than, hello, you're you're with my friend and Andy. Okay, bye.
At least you weren't it's no mystery to me why you didn't break through the way in the US market the way that Oasis did. Really,
I didn't say that.
Of the songs is
I didn't say that. No,
you did one better than me. Well, album number 3. So this is an interesting, controversial one. Okay. This one is from 1996. It is Weezer's follow-up to the Blue album, Pinkerton.
Oh, now this we can get into.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm looking out for you here, buddy.
Yeah.
So for context, for people less familiar, Weezer came out with the Blue album. That album is front to back slamming and slamming with singles. I saw them perform it in May. They did Blue album and some Pinkerton. And so that's just a radio ready, awesome, super poppy, catchy, hooky, marketable album
with big, hairy guitars on it.
Yes.
So
quite a few of them. Yes. Yeah. It eventually sold 15 million albums worldwide by 2009. It's 5 times platinum in the US. Just this massive, massive record in every way. And so Weezer, just like all the bands on this list here, have to follow up this enormous success of the first album and are kind of figuring out what to do with it. Well, Rivers Cuomo himself, basically takes an interesting tact here that I think is different. Feel free to jump in and help me on this one because you might know even more about it than I do. But he really went very personal in a lot of ways with this album.
Yeah, for reference, if people haven't listened to these back to back, the Blue album, I feel like, while there's some personal elements to it, of course, it really feels like it's kind of for anybody in their teens to mid 20s, and pretty much every person in America can relate to it. You can insert yourself as a character into any of those songs pretty much. And Pinkerton feels more like this is about Rivers in a lot of ways, which maybe not everybody can relate to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very personal. It's a much like sort of smaller. To me, it sounds like kind of bedroom poppy or bedroom like garage rocky music in a lot of ways. It very much eschews like the big production, like clean, glossy production of the first. Rick Ocasek did the first album, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's right. Yeah,
I believe like from the Cars, and then the band self-produced the second album. And so, there's some reports that Rivers was on a steady diet of painkillers at the time, and just had a lot going on, that he had a surgery and then kind of got into that. I'm not sure. I couldn't suss out how much of, what was true, because there's a lot of stuff with the Weezer like fan world. And I'm just a brief traveler into the.
It gets really deep. The lore is deep, and it's hard to suss out sometimes what's true and what isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I struggle with that somewhat, but I do know this record, and I think this is an interesting one to really talk about, like the kind of opinions of the time versus what's happened in the years that followed. So that's why I have a little bit less on the actual recording itself. So the initial reviews were overwhelmingly negative in a lot of ways. Rolling Stone readers voted it the third worst album of '96, and that's not critics; that's like the actual readers themselves. Rivers Cuomo, like there were times where he like heavily regretted this. He called it, a hideous or a very painful, mistake of a record in a lot of ways. Like you have a lot of these words of regret or shame or things like that about the way that the album came out, certainly at the time. But a few years later, everything is like wildly sort of reevaluated. By the time we get to about 2002, it had this sort of cult following in the internet. Once I got into Weezer, I think that would have been like Green Album era. And the people that I knew that were into Weezer were already like, oh no, Pinkerton's actually the masterpiece. You just need to give it some time.
Yeah. And I personally, so we're just of a different age. We weren't like paying attention to all this stuff as closely when Weezer first hit. We were too young for that. But by the time I came along and got into Weezer, all this stuff was already out there. And sorry, Rivers, I was absorbing it mostly through burned CDs that my friends gave me. So I had no like context for what came when or what was first. I just knew my friend burned me 3 Weezer CDs, Blue, Green, and Pinkerton. And I had no idea which came first. I assumed that Pinkerton came first because of how it sounds. And so I didn't have any kind of like preconceived notions about it. And Pinkerton, I just loved. I liked how raw it was. I like all of them actually, but I liked the fact that it felt like it could have been the first record. And in my mind, it was for a long time. And then I found out the reality once I had the internet and did a little Googling. But it is interesting to me that it was panned so hard. And I think that if I had to take a wild guess, I think it has less to do with the songs and the writing and more to do with that it's not as polished and people were expecting it. Because that first record sounds enormous. It's huge. And Pinkerton just sounds more like a garage rock record.
And I do think that, Pinkerton is relatable. I think that you did a good job encompassing this. It's sort of less universally relatable. It's more like deeply relatable to like, especially like teenage boys.
Yes.
In a lot of ways, but it's less like universally applicable than something like Blue is. And so basically in the 2000s, it just gets like gradually reevaluated. about 6 years, 7 years after it came out. The Rolling Stone, the same one whose readers voted it the third worst album of 96, they voted it the 16th greatest album of all time by 2002.
Right.
That's so what happened in 6 years? Mm-hmm. Pitchfork gives it a perfect score in 2003. They call it the 53rd greatest album of the 90s. Rolling Stone re-reviewed it in 2004, gives it 5 stars. Rivers Cuomo himself, has later say, I think it's great. It's super deep, brave, authentic. It's this interesting change in viewpoint over a few years. And I think that one of the things that caused that reevaluation was that they went the other way. Once they had Pinkerton out there, they hedged way back more towards, I think, kind of the commercial side with the Green. It's hard to say that exactly with the Green. It's not like it's a total sellout, but there's some very commercial songs on the Green album.
It feels very intentionally like trying to be Blue, basically.
Yeah.
Which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just it's a stark contrast to Pinkerton.
And then you get to Make Believe before long, and you have Beverly Hills, and you're going all that way. So
I don't hate that song the way the internet does. I actually like
you
that
don't?
song. Yeah.
I like that too. I got that album as a gift from a girl I was dating at the time. So it kind of feels special to me.
Yeah. People that song dropped and everyone immediately hated it, or it felt like everyone immediately hated it. And I was like, guys, this kind of just sounds like Weezer. I don't know what you're hating about it. This isn't any less or more poppy than the Sweater song.
Mm-hmm. They've always been a little bit this way.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those that it's just how universally omnipresent it became.
Yeah.
That made people hate it.
Yeah.
Which happened to a lot of rock songs in that time.
One thing I wanted to note about Pinkerton specifically, everyone always talks about Weezer in the same breath with Pavement. And I'm like, Pinkerton's what really made me go listen to Pavement.
Mm.
And I can hear a lot more of that I don't hear Pavement as much in the other stuff, but in Pinkerton I do.
I'd never heard anyone, compare those two. That's interesting to me. Mm-hmm. But I see what you're talking about when it comes to Pinkerton. Yeah. I definitely don't when it comes to the Blue album.
No, me either. But that's why it was confusing to me. I'd hear people, again, I'm going off the burned CDs and stuff. So I'm reading this in magazines and being like, what? And then I would go and find Pavement, which was a little bit harder to find at the time. I had to ride my bike to the store to do that. But yeah, with Pinkerton, I can actually see, that's where that influence comes from.
Mm-hmm.
I love Pinkerton, if you can't tell. I love that.
No, I can tell, and I love it. We should talk more about this album in the future. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to keep us trudging along because we got a few more to get through.
All right, let's go.
All right. So next up on the old list of Scott's randomly selected sophomore slumps, we have U2's October.
Okay.
I don't know how much you know about this record. U2 came out with Boy. That was their debut. Went platinum in the US, gold in the UK. Not necessarily as it's not the heights that U2 would ascend to later with Joshua Tree and whatnot, but it's a darn solid start to all of it. Oh, yeah. People are really, excited about what would happen there. In contrast, October, and this is an interesting one, it sold kind of about the same in the US. It did about 1 million units in the US, and it sold a little bit more in the UK, about 300,000 versus 100,000. So this is one where the sales say, oh, okay, we're still kind of moving along. Mm-hmm. But that's not necessarily the overall opinion, I think, from the fans at the time.
Right.
So really a lot of this comes from this story about Bono's lost lyrics. So Bono, of course, the lead singer of U2, had a briefcase containing all of his in-progress lyrics that he'd been working on for the second album that was going to follow up Boy. And he's playing a show in Portland, Oregon, where you live. And backstage, this briefcase is stolen from him, and all of the lyrics and all of his musical ideas and plans that he had for the follow-up record are suddenly just gone.
I don't know where it is.
Yeah, I don't know that it's been recovered or anything.
Hold on, I just got to move this out of camera. Anyway, nothing to see here.
So this is March in 1981 when this happens. And they're going into the studio in Dublin to record it in July 1981. So not very long thereafter. For some people, they just rip out songs all the time. But for other people, that could be a long sort of plotting process.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's not a whole lot of time. So they enter the studio really kind of they don't know what they're going to record. They don't really have a lot of their ideas, together. And they're just kind of like, oh God, we've got to put together an essay that's due tomorrow.
Right.
And we lost all of our notes.
Yeah. And 80% of our grade is dependent on this essay. Yeah. We really need to do this.
Steve Lillywhite, who was producing the album and also had produced Boy, described the sessions as completely chaotic and mad. Bono has talked later about like the immense pressure of trying to write lyrics, basically like in the vocal booth at an expensive hourly rate. So he's like improvising in a lot of cases. They're basically kind of rushing their way through this. Bono has later talked about it. He says the ironic thing about it is that there's a certain peace that he hears in the album, even though it was recorded under a crazy amount of pressure.
Interesting.
Which is interesting to me.
I wonder if that's just like the relief he felt from being able to complete it.
Maybe. Yeah. So it's an interesting one. Initially, it just didn't chart that well. It was kind of seen as a slump. It just didn't like gather that same electricity that the first album had. And especially when you have like a promising but not, earth-shattering debut, you're looking to level up with that second and continue kind of building more and more excitement. This doesn't quite do that. It's not a complete, failure by any stretch. But it's not really capitalizing on what they'd kind of built there before. And this one I chose specifically to include in here because I think it's kind of the best example of a concept that exists in a lot of albums, which is just how rushed and under the gun you can be for that second album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we touched on this earlier, but it is that way almost every time when there's a big contract involved. It feels, at least in my view, we've heard this story so many times.
Oh yeah, tons. And back in the day, it was like, especially in the 60s, you would put out an album and they would expect you to put out another album sometime inside that same like year.
Yes.
That happened to the Doors. The Doors came out with Strange Days as their second, and then the self-titled that had Break On Through and all that. Those came out both in the same year. They're both 67.
Oh, really? I didn't realize
that.
Yeah.
And that would happen a lot.
I don't pay any attention to the Doors.
And one day we will talk more about that particular fact. But for now, I'm going to pull you back into we're getting there. This is album number 5.
Okay.
All right?
No,
so this one, we're also in 1981, but in a very different musical universe. This is the great Meatloaf and his album Dead Ringer.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Are you familiar with Dead Ringer very much?
No, only the other ones.
You're not alone.
Yes.
That is the general tenor of a lot of the Meatloaf.
I just know Bad Out of Hell. That's
yeah,
one
and Bad Out of Hell 2 and Bad Out of Hell 3 and
1 and 2
those
are the ones I know the most.
Yes. So this album's an interesting one. It comes out about 4 years after Bad Out of Hell. And for people that don't know, Bad Out of Hell was freaking massive.
Huge.
Enormous. It was such a big thing. That could be an episode all to itself. But I've heard plenty about how when they were shopping it, he just out of nowhere did this very operatic album, and it was just like nothing else that had been around. I'd heard that a lot of the record label execs he played it for thought it was a joke and were like, what the heck? What are you talking about? Nobody really, believed in it except for the people that eventually put it out. And it went so big. It went 14 times platinum in the US. It sold 14 million units in the US.
That's
12
crazy.
times platinum in the UK, which is about 3.6 million units over there. It was absolutely monstrous.
Yes.
It was absolutely huge. So this is one of those albums where on this list where somebody's got a lot, so they've got some big shoes to fill.
Yes.
With the second record, right?
I just want to give a quick plug because we're going to do this a lot because I have another podcast. Eddie Martinez played on that record and I got to interview him. He's a really cool, awesome guy. So
how cool.
Yeah. He lives here in Portland. That's how that happened. So
didn't know that.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
first off, for those who don't know, there's this guy named Jim Steinman that wrote Bat Out of Hell and several of the Meatloaf records and a bunch of other famous songs from other people at the time. What's that Bonnie Tyler song?
Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Banger.
Yeah. That's also Jim Steinman. The dude's got like kind of a style, I will say.
Oh yeah. It's specific.
Yeah.
I love it.
So he kind of gets to work after there's this huge hit with the first one. He gets to work on, his next kind of bevy of songs, which are, nominally considered to be Meatloaf's. It doesn't sound like he wrote them specifically for Meatloaf, but like, he's the guy who this is such a huge success. It's expected that his next stuff's all going to go to him. But that gets complicated because Meatloaf like has a lot of vocal struggles in this time, and is unable to sing for like whole periods of time.
Wow. Okay.
And so this is just getting delayed and delayed. Again, like we said, this is like the 70s, like 1977 when Bat Out of Hell comes out. So this is a time where it's expected you're putting that next album out pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another one that to that earlier point, I think Zeppelin put out 2 albums in the same year. I think Zeppelin 1 and 2 came out in the same year. I could be wrong.
I did not know that either.
But they're at least like within 12 months of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a long time. So there's record company pressure. Steinman doesn't know what to do. And he decided that he's not going to wait around for Meatloaf with these songs. He is going to put out his own album and he's going to sing the parts. So he puts out this album called Bad for Good, which ostensibly would have probably been, Bat Out of Hell 2 if they'd put it out. But Meatloaf wasn't really ready for it. And that record is not generally, it was not super well received at the time.
Okay.
Jim Steinman has like, I don't want to criticize the guy or anything, but he doesn't have Meatloaf's voice. Let's like for the
nobody's got Meatloaf's voice.
It's a thinner, more kind of normal person voice. Not this like big beckoning, operatic voice. And so he just doesn't sell it right. The songs are every bit as big, but the voice isn't there to really make it make sense.
It'd be like one of us trying to sing a Meatloaf song. It doesn't work. Like we might be able to hit the notes.
Speak for yourself, sir.
Oh, can you sing Meatloaf?
I could try.
Well, I can try. I can try.
I have the opposite problem. I can do like operatic stuff because I grew up doing musical theater. It was always hard for me to sing like Stephen Malkmus. Just like a very matter of fact, like,
Okay, I can do that. So maybe we need to form a band.
We need to form a band. I don't know how it's taken this long.
Yeah, no kidding. Podcast businesses, band time.
One day, once we're in our 60s. Anyway, so Jim Steinman puts that album out. Some of the songs in that album are later recorded by Meatloaf for other projects and stuff. But basically he goes into like, okay, once Meatloaf's ready, he's like, oh, I'll write you some songs now for your second record. So he's kind of writing them purpose built just for Meatloaf. Some people, even on that record that Jim Steinman did himself, there's some kind of naked attempts to just do the thing again. Right. Like there's this one that's like pretty much the same concept as Paradise by the Dashboard Light. It's like the guy girl back and forth, and it's it doesn't quite land there. So when he's going, especially when he's going back and writing just for Meatloaf, he's really trying to do the Bat Out of Hell thing again, but it's not. It just doesn't quite land. It doesn't have the same magic that it has.
Sometimes when you're trying to recreate a thing that you've already made, it can be challenging because there's something, in the atmosphere or emotionally, or there's always something that's happening when the first thing's being made that can be really hard to try to replicate. And you're like, well, now I'm just going to clone this song. And it's like, well, that doesn't really work.
No, it does.
It's rare.
This album does have one kind of like really big hit. I don't think it's that good personally, but it's called Dead Ringer for Love, and it's Meatloaf and Cher.
I've heard this song. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. In this guy's opinion, Meatloaf and Cher being together on it in 1971 is just such a story that it kind of, pushes that thing into getting some love. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's
71.
Awesome.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I said 71. 81.
Okay,
Excuse
I was
me.
like, wait a minute. My brain just cannot handle the
apologies.
Okay, That I can make sense of. All right, cool.
Yeah. So this album comes out, and this is one of our like zero strike or 3 strikes, I guess, examples on this list. The critics hate it in every way. Rolling Stone described it as a cast iron drag.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. They describe Meatloaf's vocals as, quote, alarmingly awful.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, and it does not sell either. Again, remember, we're going up against like 14 million units for Bat Out of Hell. This thing, it doesn't really go anywhere. It reached number 45 in the Billboard Top 200. It's just nothing of the commercial success or the critical success or the fan success of the first one. It just doesn't take.
And it doesn't really have its Pinkerton moment either, where people find it later and are like, actually, this was really good.
Nope. But we got 2 more albums to go. So we're going to jump right through it. I'm realizing that I probably should have picked less than 7, but you, dear listener, are in for the ride. So we're going to keep on.
We're going to get through it. We're going to go.
The next one, speaking of Pinkerton, is the Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique from 1989.
Man, this album, I really like this record. I can see why it's on the list, but man, I like Paul's Boutique. It's a cool record.
Yeah. So this one is on the list to typify something that we quite haven't seen yet, which is an album that is critically loved, but the sales don't match the first record.
And I totally get why.
I do too. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this record. I take it that you are too.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I love this record.
So we will probably do a bad job of talking about what's allegedly lame about this record. Other than that, it's just they really pushed themselves. So they're recording with the Dust Brothers, who did like all the big Beck records from the 90s and early 2000s, Wero and Odelay, Midnight Vultures, which I love Midnight Vultures, by the way. The Dust Brothers did those. They did this. They did Hanson's Mbop.
Nope. And we're back. No, we're not. And now we're back. We froze. That was fun. I've marked the clip. I shall try to remember to edit that out. But if I don't, that's what happened, everybody. So,
well, I'm just going to jump right back in talking about the Dust Brothers.
The Dust Brothers. Yeah, that works.
Okay. So the Beastie Boys jump in with the Dust Brothers to produce this record. And the Dust Brothers, I freaking love the Dust Brothers. They do like a lot of the great Beck stuff in the later 2000s or like later 90s and early 2000s. What is it? Odelay, definitely Wero, Midnight Vultures, I believe. They didn't do Mellow Gold. Yeah. They're awesome. I love their style. They have this like cut up, sample heavy sort of style that's obviously on full display on Paul's Boutique. Oh, quick trivia note. The Dust Brothers, like pretty much all they ever did was like all those Beck albums, Beastie Boys, Paul's Boutique, the like soundtrack theme song stuff to Fight Club, the movie.
Okay. Yep.
And Hanson's Mbop.
What?
Yeah.
What? I didn't know the Dust Brothers had anything to do with that. What?
They sure did.
Okay. Wow. They got range.
It's bizarre. And to my knowledge, like, really haven't done anything since.
I guess you don't have to.
Yeah, I guess that probably paid the bills.
Yeah, I think the bills done been paid. They're good.
Speaking as someone who looks increasingly more like one of the Hanson brothers every day as this hair keeps going out.
I could only dream.
But this style is really, really, really sample heavy. And that's a thing that does happen in the 80s, like compared to hip hop production in the 90s or 2000s. You'll see people like Public Enemy does this a lot, where they're using like dozens and dozens and dozens of samples inside of just one song. It's not like that one sample they cleared that's like the hook. It's tons of different samples coming at you all the time. For this record, most of them were authorized like really affordably and simply at the time, which people have said it would just be unthinkable today. But it wasn't yet this big zeitgeist of like, oh, they're cutting up our music and making money with it, and we're not making enough money at the time. They're like, okay, yeah, I guess you can use it for whatever the heck this is.
Yeah, they didn't really know what it was going to turn into. They're just like, I guess. You can use they probably viewed it as like using a piece of music on a documentary or something.
Yeah. But so, License to Ill was like this massive thing. And a lot of people, thought that they were like going to be one hit wonder band or something like that. And so they go in to like make this really, really ambitious and rich record that explores like the new uncharted territory of what like hip hop could be in a lot of ways. This is not them just like putting their stamp on the classic sound of the time or making a thing just for the radio.
And this has become more public knowledge as the years have worn on, but I didn't know this for quite a while until maybe 10 years ago. The Beastie Boys came out of the New York punk and hardcore scene. So I just viewed them as a hip hop group when I was growing up. And then finding out that they had this relation to this scene I was very familiar with, I was like, wait, what happened? And then I found Paul's Boutique and I was like, oh, I can see it all now. I can see how this is all crossing over. Yeah.
It's.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I'll jump in. So Capitol Records, they have this huge success with License to Ill, both commercially and critically. They want a quick follow-up, which is a constant theme that we've seen here. They're willing to throw money at the problem. So the band's like recording out in LA. They're a bit estranged from Rick Rubin and Def Jam, so things are a little bit weird. So they're kind of far away from New York. They're out in LA and recording this. It was costly. Mike D said that they were just wasting tons of money recording at the record plant out in LA. They make this record and it's a masterpiece, but in like the sort of inscrutable masterpiece sort of way. Like, Hey Ladies is like a big catchy number, but there's not a lot of like easy singles on it,
No, that's really it.
Yeah. That's all that I can really think of. That would be on it. But there's these amazing, cool interludes and stuff. But I mean, nothing that's going to be all that marketable. So Capitol Records has a bunch of money wrapped up in this thing. And this is what they get. And they don't seem to really understand it. And so they don't promote it very much. Mike D recalled a street awareness program suggesting like doing a diss track targeting MC Hammer. There's all sorts of weird stuff. And they're like, all right, this is how we can make this work. And in a lot of ways, I do think that in this time, the labels had a pretty clear idea of what hip hop or rap was and who it appealed to and the way that you market it, and they just weren't ready for this record to understand who to push this to or why. I mean, it's like a sound collage. It's very arty to me.
I feel like the record labels didn't really understand that a record like this could be valuable and entertaining to enough people until some of the Odd Future stuff we were talking about in the last episode, like years and years later.
Yep. 100%. And so this album comes out, like I said, the critics love it. Like the critics love the production. They think that's awesome. They find the Beastie Boys like verses hilarious, vicious, surreal, and snotty was what the Chicago Tribune said. Melody Maker called it an outrageously funky triumph. The Rolling Stone loved it. They loved the interplay of the three voices, and they called it a poetic tornado of imagery, which I love. So like in every way, the critics are absolutely eating this thing up. But it just doesn't really sell the same way. And you could put that on the label with the promotion. There's not much in the way of singles like we talked about. It peaked at the number 14 on the Billboard 200. It didn't last there very, very long. It went gold by like 1989, the year that it was released, which is not a lot compared to License to Ill at the time.
Yeah.
It sold 2 million copies by like January 1999. So over the course of like 10 full years, it got up to two times platinum. Whereas like License to Ill was certified diamond in the US.
I 10 million think we can all, though, like if we just step back and look at the two records, it's pretty clear though. I mean, yeah, the License to Ill it's kind of like the Weezer thing. This can appeal to everybody. Everybody can shout "No Sleep Till Brooklyn," right? And have a great time doing it. Paul's Boutique takes a little more of I really want to listen to a record approach. And I really want to absorb a record and see what these guys are trying to say. It's less of I can put this on and party.
Yep.
Even though License to Ill, I think, has elements of that as well, but it's like it's a party like everybody knows that record, everybody. And Paul's Boutique just requires a little bit more out of the listener, and a record like that is never going to sell as well as a big, broadly appealing party record.
100%. Well, we've got one more to jump into, and then we're going to talk about some themes that cross through several of these, if not all of them.
All right.
So I've saved, I don't know if I would say the best for last, but I've saved one of the albums for last, which is Hootie and the Blowfish's Fairweather Johnson from 1996.
Oh boy. All right. Okay. Here we go.
So, somewhat similar to some of the other records that we were talking about earlier, like mostly like Meatloaf. Hootie and the Blowfish's debut album, Cracked Rear View, was freaking huge.
Inescapably huge.
Yeah, it went 22 times platinum in the US. It was the best-selling album of 1995. It was huge. Similarly to what you just said, everyone knew, like, I only want to be with you and hold my hand. Everybody.
I didn't even listen to this record until much later because I grew up in a 90s country household, and that's what we listened to. So Hootie and the Blowfish was just something that I would hear. I think the name has a lot to do with it. You hear that Hootie and the Blowfish, you're like, what the heck is that? What is that? And so you'd hear it and you'd remember it. And I didn't listen to it until later. But even I, who was like, no internet, obviously, is the 90s, no MTV, just country radio is all I had. I still knew who Hootie and the Blowfish were. Like they were inescapably huge.
Nay, my first 3 concerts were all Hootie and the Blowfish.
All of them?
Yeah, they played at Ribfest in downtown Indianapolis, which was free. So my parents would take us down, and we never like went to concerts. So we would do free stuff mostly. And so I saw them play, and they were good.
I could be really into sitting down, eating some ribs, and watching Hootie and the Blowfish. I could get down on that.
Yeah. Yes. But everyone, including my parents, would complain like the ribs are so expensive. I'm like, well, the show is free. They're going to get you somehow.
Yeah. They're not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts.
So we wouldn't eat the ribs either. We would just go.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was a bit of a pain. But I mean, it was cool to see. It was always like every year it was like Hootie and the Blowfish one night, Ted Nugent the other night, and Buddy Guy the other night.
Well, that does sound like a good time.
We would go for Hootie.
I'd like to go for all of them. That sounds like a riot, especially in the 90s.
I think we chose right. I think this is the early 2000s at the time.
Okay, well, so, you did.
Anyway, Hootie and the Blowfish is trying to figure out how we respond to this massive success of a thing that kind of came out of nowhere. Like you said, they're a band with this crazy weird name that it just took off and caught fire and went nuts. And I don't have a ton of stories about what happened like in the studio with this one. What I basically heard is that the band was just not concerned about the pressure. I have a quote that said they were utterly unperturbed. Despite like there being so much pressure following it up. They included the song Old Man and Me, which is one of the singles, which was like one of their older band songs that they'd had since they were like a small band in South Carolina, which some people will interpret it as, kind of a thumbing of the nose to those who were saying, okay, we're gonna build this thing into this massive critical success. In fact, they're like, no, we're the same band we've always been. We're gonna pull out these things from our past. They're still spotlighting Darius Rucker's voice. I mean, that's the centerpiece of the band, right? Yeah. So that's definitely still there. But it just doesn't really work in the same way.
It doesn't.
A lot of the critics just describe it as kind of like a dour sort of alt rock inspired, like a predecessor to what we would call butt rock.
Yeah, it doesn't. It feels like, to me, and I'm putting words in the band's mouth right now. To me, it feels like we're here because we have to be. Let's just get this done.
It does. And they don't have that like jangle, like that jangle and that bounce that they had in it's a very kind of early 90s sound, that one. That kind of goes away, and it's more just kind of middling alt rock with a baritone vocal on it.
Yeah. It's barely the same band. Like it's hard to even think of it. I know it is, but it does not sound like the same band.
No. And you and I are not the only people that feel this way. It's generally just maligned. Nobody finds anything good to say about it. I listened to this one earlier this morning as I was like preparing this, and I was like, yeah, I mean, it's not like terrible.
It's not
There's
awful.
just nothing good about it.
I don't remember a single thing about it. That's how I just remember that I didn't care for it.
Because I was listening through some of the songs on these to be like, a lot of them you're like, oh, that's actually a great number. It was just not totally appreciated at the time. I didn't feel that way about this. They're just fine.
Yeah. Crack
They feel a little formulaic.
Rear View is that's the Hootie album.
It's the Hootie album. They just don't recapture that in the same way. This one certainly doesn't do it. And, they really don't go on to recapture it later on. They put out more albums. I think they kind of get more attention once Darius Rucker, like his next big attention bump comes when he splits off and goes solo and goes country.
Yeah. Yep. Rock Me Mama Like a Wagon Wheel.
Exactly. So we've got 7 different albums that I've sort of randomly selected that I think show a lot of different ways that this thing can go. Yeah. I was looking at this and I was like, all right, we're just going to have sophomore slumps. Like, it's just like, oh, these records sucked. But then the more I dug in, the more I was like, oh, a lot of the commonly cited sophomore slumps, it's not quite that simple. You've got some that suck.
Right.
that does seem to happen. I would say that like Meatloaf's Dead Ringer and Hootie in the Blowfish's Fairweather Johnson generally are not considered to be all that great. That does happen. But you have some masterpieces in here. You have Pinkerton, Paul's Boutique. I mean, these are like arguably the best thing the band's ever did.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting one. And, it's funny that you talked about this. I wonder if this was partially inspired, because I did know you were going to do this. I just didn't know you were going to do it today. Somebody that I feel like had just an insanely great record and then kind of had a sophomore slump. I don't know what exactly happened with the band, but do you remember when Unwritten Law dropped Elva?
No, I'm not into that record at all.
Oh, Scott, you got to listen to Elva. It's just banger after banger after banger. And then the band's like, all right, they did an acoustic version of it. And then it's just, and that's a great record too. Very different vibe. And I don't know what happened to that band after that.
And that's it.
They had another record, but it was definitely a slump. But I was thinking about it while my wife and I were listening to Elva this weekend. I'm like, I wonder if this is going to come up in a sophomore slump episode. So
that'd be a good one to include. Yeah. There's plenty of these. So yeah, that's why I had to just pick a few.
I think you did a good selection of various ways it can go down.
Yeah. A couple of the trends that I wrote down, and feel free to interject at any point.
Okay.
That I see running through some of these, if not all. So you've got like the general, just the weight of the expectation that came from the first one. Stone Roses, like this is especially apparent with the massive debut bands. Hootie, Stone Roses, Meatloaf. It does seem like it didn't bother Hootie that much. But,
I think it felt like one thing that I said in the main part was felt like they didn't care. Maybe they didn't. They're like, we got millions and millions of dollars. What are we going to do? Yeah. Who cares? We'll just do it. And if people like it, whatever. It kind of feels like they weren't emotionally impacted, which I'm happy about. I'm glad that they're happy.
I do think that weight goes in 2 different directions. It can drive people to want to replicate the thing again. Like you kind of saw like most closest with Meatloaf here. Of like, oh, let's just do the thing again and hope that it works, and it doesn't. Or it can lead you to want to diverge rather sharply from it. Certainly Pinkerton is a big divergence. The Clash is a little bit of a story of that in maybe a slightly different way. And then, Hootie's like on the category of everything not to do here. So I'll include that one there.
In one way, we covered a whole album that could be viewed as that is In Utero.
Totally.
Which is, I think, more like the Pinkerton, like, they feeling the pressure and deciding to rebel against it. Is I think what happened with all our favorite ones, I think, with In Utero, Pinkerton, and Paul's Boutique, all feel like they were ones that like, we feel the pressure and we're not going to cave to it.
Yeah, I think that there's like a whole other episode talking about like follow-up albums that are distinct from being sophomore slumps, like In Utero, where it's the band's third record. Alanis Morissette's follow-up to Jagged Little Pill is like, does not work. That's like similarly an interesting thing here. But jumping back in, another thing that I see is like the time factor. What we talked about with the Elvis Costello quote of having 20 years to write your first album and 6 months to write the next one. People are being kind of put through the ringer to come up with this album. This is especially the case with that U2 record that I included, especially when you lose the material and you got to put something out. Right, you're gonna have to kind of nail through it. But you also have the opposite effect of time here in our list with like the Stone Roses, where it's like 5.5 years later, or Meatloaf, where it's 4 years later. It kind of went on so long that it built up these big expectations, and people were expecting another magnum opus that was just impossible to deliver on.
Chinese Democracy, prime example.
Chinese Democracy.
Yes, it is. You're right. The time, it goes both ways. There's people who try to crush it out, and then there's people who kind of decide to lay back with it. And in all of these examples, it seems like taking your time actually wasn't the way to go, at least in these 7 episodes.
Generally not.
Episodes, topics. Albums. That's the word.
Something like U2's October that was like a wham bam. Maybe that wasn't great, but they just kept on. They just kept on going.
Yeah, it got them to Joshua Tree.
Yeah, keep putting more stuff out and find your way there, right? One common theme that you see come up with a few of these is like just producer troubles. This comes up with The Clash and Sandy Pearlman, with like them disagreeing about what the album should be, what it should sound like, how it should be mixed and all that. Weezer went the other way from that, where you have a band going from Rick Ocasek into self-produced and taking way more control. So again, that can go wrong either way.
Yes.
Either looking for more polish. Steve Lillywhite did the same thing for U2 in October, though I still think that was mostly the lost lyrics. So we've seen in these examples that going to a new producer, sticking with the same producer, or going with no producer, all have produced difficult results for different bands.
Yes. Production swaps, we'll call it. Yeah.
Yes. Now, one of the big interesting things I think here that I love with these are the swaths of albums that kind of got their due later on.
Yeah.
And, Pinkerton, as we've talked about a lot, certainly did. Like, this is a legendary and loved album now. Nobody really thinks of it as a slump. If we had this in the title, I'm sure we'll get comments like, Pinkerton isn't a slump. And you're like, yeah, I know, but it was conceived to be at the time.
Yeah, I might even call it Weezer's Pinkerton and other sophomore slumps and just see.
Oh no, just to poke people.
Just to poke people. But we both
Paul's Boutique is similar, but Paul's Boutique is still it's not as universally adored as like a Pinkerton, I think.
I feel like
it still is a involved listen.
I think Paul's Boutique didn't get because it was well received when it first came out, it didn't get to have the revisionist history done to it, you know? And so that I think Pinkerton benefited from a whole wave of new media focus on it, where Paul's Boutique didn't really have that redemption arc.
Yeah. I want to also note that like generally in from what I can tell in U2 like fandom, October is thought of reasonably well.
I don't think I've only listened to it. Well, it's been probably a decade since I've listened to it. I don't remember like hating it.
No.
So
me either. So it's not like considered like just garbage nowadays. It's generally like gotten a little bit more of its due a little bit later. And then, like we saw here, that's why I wanted to compare and contrast, because we have some where it's like a critical darling, but a commercial disappointment, which is like the Paul's Boutique and and Pinkerton. You have some where it's like both commercial and critical struggles, like Meatloaf and Hootie. So it can be a little bit tricky.
That's my new band, Meatloaf and the Hootie.
Meatloaf and the Hooties.
Think I can get like 22 times platinum with that band name?
I'm gonna go for it. I don't think so, but it's been done. Sometimes you just need something a little ridiculous. But my final kind of nebulous thing to discuss here with these albums is where the bands went after, like the sort of like lasting or lingering effects of a sophomore slump. Because with a band like Weezer, you saw them, like we talked about, really hedge back towards commercial music and kind of stay there, like for the rest of their career.
They didn't do another Pinkerton.
No, that was like they snapped back out of it and then just continued going in there. So they were able to certainly save it, you know, in terms of their career, save it. But like commercially, they were able to make a lot of money for the rest of their career. But it definitely changed the trajectory for them. I think if Pinkerton was loved and adored and loved even more than the Blue Album, we would have seen a very different follow up third album and fourth album and fifth album from Weezer.
We might have gotten like a Weezer in utero, like something very abrasive and very in your face.
Holy cow, that'd be amazing.
Dude, can you imagine if Rivers was just like, I'm going full punk rock on this next one? It'd be awesome.
In Weezer-o.
Yeah,
that'd be
Weezer-o.
amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, on the other side, you saw bands like the Stone Roses where they just shut it down, basically. That's kind of it. And I mean, granted, taking a long time to make an album will do that. You're like, well, what are we going to do? Put out another one in 2003?
And to take that long and work that hard on it and then have it be a disappointment. That's the thing. Even if it did like moderately well, it would have still been a disappointment by comparison, probably. And comparison is what is this whole episode is based on comparison. We're comparing the first album to the second album.
Yep.
And so while you're not supposed to do that, it can be the thief of joy. As an artist whose career is depending on this being successful, and you're like, wow, it didn't even touch the first record. And I poured like every bit of myself that I could into it, just as much as I did the first time. And it still isn't doing the same. I could see why they're like, you know what? We're just going to collect those royalties now. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. And, final note there is that the opposite can be true for some of these bands too, where the bands that survived one of these sophomore slumps, like the Beastie Boys is a good example to me, I think had even more artistic freedom in some ways and felt comfy doing all sorts of different stuff for a great many years thereafter.
Yeah, that opened the door for them in a big way. Not commercially speaking, but artistically speaking for sure.
So I hope this has been, a fun, like sort of random roundup of different types of sophomore slumps. The main takeaway, like I was saying, is I don't think there's any one kind of sophomore slump that you have here, but the expediency, the pressure, and all these things that we talked about, I think can lead to a couple of like outcomes that we've seen across different bands. That's my take.
It's enough of a thing that it has a name, so it's obviously a thing. Yeah. Well, Scott, thank you for taking us through those 7 records. I'm going to go back and listen to some of these, actually. I'm actually going to see how... I know I've listened to that Meatloaf record, but I don't remember. It's like, I don't remember a lot of these. Yeah, you could tell the ones I did remember. I'd be like, oh, yeah, it's Paul's Boutique. All right, let's go. But a lot of them, I'm like, I know that that's an album, but I don't remember it very well. October is another one. From like, it's just in there, but barely.
That's how I feel, man. Like there's like Dead Ringer and Fairweather Johnson that I'm like, well, all right, I could never, and Second Coming really too from Stone Roses, I could never listen to again. There's Give 'Em Enough Rope in October that are like, there's some good songs. They're not like my favorite things I've ever heard, but they're all right. And then of course you've got the really good stuff. Pinkerton, Paul's Boutique, etc.
And now I want to pose a question for the comment section here. So whether you're on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're doing this, there's probably a comment section somewhere. Do you think we will see sophomore slump start to dry up? Because now we're in the age of singles and people's records not being, to me, they're just as important as ever, but I'm old. So are like records gonna matter? Are we going to see sophomore slump singles? What are some other ones we missed? Drop it in the comments. Maybe we'll do another episode on it in the future. We appreciate everything you guys do for us in that regard, because it does. We read the comments. We try to get back to those that we can. And also, like, it does sometimes provide a spark for another episode. So please do jump in there, reviews on iTunes.
We were just accused of being Satanists in a recent response.
Very
just today.
interesting. Yeah, that's not something I've had levied at me before.
Didn't see that coming. No, but why not?
Yeah, I'm not sure at what point we've said anything that would lead anyone to believe that, but all right, it was an interesting email to get.
The point is, regardless of what you have to say, we appreciate you saying it.
Yeah, that's right. And thank you, everybody, for checking this out. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff wherever you're checking this out. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you on the internet very, very soon.